Hello, Horror Fanatics. I'm Frank.
And I'm Jenn, and we welcome you to our weekly podcast, The Horror.
Thank you for joining us as we dive deep into all things horror, supernatural, scary, and downright creepy.
If you like what you hear, you can rate, review, subscribe, or follow to add us to your regular rotation of podcasts.
You can also submit any ideas, comments, and suggestions to our email address at oth@seriouslydecent.com, and you can go to our website at ohthehorrorpodcast.com.
You can.
Yes, where you can connect right to our YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
The whole back catalog's right there.
Yeah,
it is. The whole dang thing, the whole kit and caboodle. Yes. Yeah, you can catch it all there. You can connect to your favorite podcast platform, which you should be doing that anyways. If you're here listening to us,
you found us.
You know what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yes. I think if anything, our big request would be if you could go to Apple Podcasts and give us 5 stars.
Yeah.
Give us a shout out. Say you enjoy the podcast. Mm-hmm. That's all. That's really our only ask. He's got to go out to the bathroom, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
All right. Well, let's pause this and we'll come back.
All right.
And we're back. Yes. Our creative director, Dean Winchester, had to go to the bathroom.
Directed creatively. Mm-hmm. Yes, he did.
Did a bork.
Yep.
I ain't going to make it.
I can't.
I'm not going to make it.
I can't wait for you guys.
No.
You guys.
I know how this goes.
Last week, we'll just run through our stuff. 2 hours later.
Yeah. So actually, before we kick this episode off, there was some, the FBI announced arrest. I think there's 2 people, but it's basically this child trafficking ring. And it was disgusting to hear. I'm not going to get into the whole group and the weeds and the members because it's on my other laptop.
Right.
And my tablet here doesn't have that.
Right.
It was something I was going to do until the weekend started.
Yes.
And now here we are, and we're like, whoa.
Whoa. Oh, no.
I ran out of time.
Oh, no.
But what was really concerning and just really kind of creepy, and it's, I try to bring this stuff up because people need to hear about it.
Yes.
But basically, they were like typical trafficking rings using encrypted messaging, things like that.
Yep.
And there is this kind of core group, and I'd be curious to see how much it expands to an outer group because that's usually how it works out.
Correct.
But they would target vulnerable populations, including minor girls with mental health challenges, and attempt to socially engineer them, gain their trust, and then groom them to share private information, intimate visual depictions of themselves, engaging in sexually explicit conduct.
Yep.
And you're asking, hey, Frank, where are you getting this? This is the actual criminal complaint on justice.org.
Right.
Through the government. So this isn't a news article. This is an actual criminal complaint that's filed.
Right.
With this private information, they would, this private information and intimate images of the victims, this group would then use the material to coerce the victims into providing more extreme and degrading content.
Yeah, they used it as leverage.
And this would be images of the victims cutting the names of the members of the groups into their bodies, setting themselves on fire, abusing their pets or siblings, and even suicide. The members would then compile the material they obtain for their victims into these books, and they would share within the channels of their network.
Mm-hmm.
These 2 people that they had were a leadership role, and they would recruit prospective members based on quality and notoriety of the content they produced and posted online. So if you're new to this, and this is all a shock, I really recommend listening to our human trafficking series that we did
last September,
because this, if you've been listening to us and you're a regular follower of us, this is no surprise.
No.
This is what they do. So the lore books contain child pornography, and this would serve as valuable currency within the criminal enterprise they're working in.
Yeah. Yeah.
The content generated and shared by these members were through the extortion and sexual exploitation of vulnerable minor victims. And it not only resulted in individual members earning invitations to join the inner core of this group, but it would also help in maintaining and increasing their position in the group. The content also served the ends of the enterprise itself by gaining more attention and notoriety for the group and attracting more prospective recruits to join, thereby furthering the goals of this group, spreading their overall ideology. The members created and shared their content. The material was often stored in online vaults managed by the members of this group. They would agree to preserve the material for other members if they were arrested or otherwise disrupted by law enforcement. The members have also engaged in acts of real-world violence, such as destroying property, spray painting their handle, their monikers, and iconography on buildings. So basically, the group's called 764.
Okay.
So if you see 764 and you see that on there, this is them.
Okay.
You know, it's not anything else. It's this group. And if you see that where you are, that's how close to home this stuff is for you.
Right.
They do, spray on public buildings, physical abuse of animals, physical assaults on people, including stabbings and attempted murder. The group has shifted names over time, so they've spawned these known offshoot groups. And the group moves between social media channels and changes its name. But the core members, the methods, the goal remain consistent. And that's just a small part of this criminal complaint right on the U.S. Department of Justice. It's case 125 MJ 00061. And it was assigned 4/15/2025. When I was just telling Jen before we were hopping on, because I was pissed because I had it on my other laptop, and I'm thinking, I'll be able to find it. Nope.
No.
It just gets me right under my nerves that this is just not even being reported.
This information gets buried.
It's buried. And looking at it at a search engine, I had to go to news. I had to get really creative with my search terms to pick it up.
Yeah.
And what do I pick up? The actual Department of Justice.gov posting. So it's like, great. I don't even have this from a news source.
Right.
That I can like piggyback to.
Yeah.
Or they have it piggybacked or linked or hyperlinked over to something else. It's just furious.
Yes. Infuriating.
Infuriating. I mean, it just, April 25th, that was dropped.
April 15th.
Well, 15th's even worse.
Yeah.
Is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
It's just, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that develops, because that's something I'll definitely keep an eye on and get some updates. And I think if they're starting now with this type of stuff, I would imagine more are going to start coming in.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I would bet.
That scenario that you mentioned, the getting that leverage from these kids and then using it against them to get even more. I've heard that before.
Yeah.
That's not something new. And
no, we mentioned it back in September last year.
Yeah.
And other groups talk about it. I'm not talking like I own it. I'm not claiming that. But the fact is there's a lot of independent people like myself and other people that are doing all of this work. And it's just a relief to see the federal government now taking this on.
Yes.
And taking it on more than just a little splashy news thing once in a while. The wording in that criminal complaint is what I've been wanting to hear for the longest time, that we're busting these up. They're pushing this stuff around like trading cards. They're going after certain demographics.
Yes.
And once they got a hold of these people, they're doing what they want. Ultimately, I hate to say it, but if you're one of those people that follow Face Group or any of these social media areas and you have local people around you posting things saying, this kid just disappeared and he's gone, or he or she's gone, because it's not a she thing either. It's boys.
Children.
It's children. It's boys and girls. They are both. You hear these families talk about it. There's one, a guy I used to work with, and he put a thing. These two brothers, they're just gone.
Mm-hmm.
They disappeared. The family has no idea where they are.
Mm-hmm.
The family has no idea where they are. And I almost felt like reaching out and being like, this is probably what happened. I can't say for certain because I'm not there. I don't have all the evidence or whatever. But the fact is they get these kids in such compromising positions where they are now pushed into this realm of, if they don't do what this person is asking them to do, they're going to humiliate not only their life, but their family's life, everything.
Yes.
And the problem is any preteen or tween or even teenager is not equipped.
They care about.
They're not equipped to handle that kind of a situation.
Mm-mm.
Adults can barely handle that situation.
It is worth repeating, and I will repeat this anytime a topic like this comes up. There are no safe spaces online. You as a parent are responsible for your children. You need to be monitoring what they're doing. You need to be monitoring their activity. And if you're like, it's not that bad, you need to watch at least a couple episodes of Undercover Underage, and you can see the moment a profile of a child goes live, they are being contacted immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately.
It's in seconds.
And that's not even by someone pretending to be a child.
No.
That's by someone who is an adult and is claiming to be an adult.
Basically, the dialogue goes, hey, how old are you? Oh,
Exactly.
I'm 13.
Yes.
Okay, do you mind talking to somebody who's 30?
Exactly.
And the kid will go, no, they're in.
Do you mind talking to someone who's 13?
It's that quick.
Yep.
It's that quick.
That's how quickly it
Or
happens.
they'll say, can I keep a secret? They're groomed in less than 2 minutes.
Correct.
It takes less than 2 minutes to groom these kids.
Yes.
And they're already withholding information from their parents, their secrets. You know, it's just...
It's horrible.
It is. It's horrible. And the only way kids can be protected from this is from their parents.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, you got to be a parent.
Yes. You have to
This
know
whole
what
thing
your children are doing.
I want to be my kid's friend and all this other stuff. No, not with this.
Your job is to be their parent.
Yeah. Till they're 18.
They make friends in school. That's what school is for.
Mm-hmm.
That's where their friends come from.
People around the block or
exactly.
whatever. But
your job is to be their parent.
It's just too protected of a space for predators.
Yes.
It's naturally too protective. Mm-hmm. And it's just disgusting. And
it's like shooting fish in a barrel.
More and more.
You've literally put your children in a barrel.
More and more, I'm definitely motivated to do that episode that I was planning for the summer, where we'll do it on the YouTube channel, where I'll get the setup because it's for the stock stuff, but it's also for that, where I want to have the multi-screens up, and I want to just show how quick it really is to get people going through that.
But that's not what our episode is about.
That's not what we
week.
came here for. I just wanted to kind of give a current events thing with that and just kind of give updates because it falls in line with what we were talking about
we do.
6 months ago.
We've got a good old-fashioned BOGO on our hands.
Yeah, we do. So what are you
Cryptid
covering?
version. I'm doing the Porterville Gnome, and I have 3 sources.
Really?
YourCentralValley.com, CJOnline.com, and The Mythical Creatures Bible by Brenda Rosen.
Wow.
And what are you doing?
I'm doing the Skunk Ape.
You are.
Florida's
Bigfoot, for those of you who don't know.
Yeah, so it was pretty much a bunch of Florida stuff, but there's actually a Skunk Ape research headquarters.
Of course there is.
Yeah. And it's in Florida. Mm-hmm. They actually offer information on sightings, tours, Skunk Ape merchandise. Mm-hmm. So you can go to their website, which is pretty self-explanatory.
Yes.
The Skeptical Inquirer.
Mm-hmm.
There was
as opposed to the National Enquirer.
There was a clip on YouTube called Beige Frequency.
Okay.
And they were doing a documentary style video analyzing the authenticity of a skunk ape with photographs. And that's about it. It was just kind of some picking through news articles and things like that. using the Wayback Machine.
Not the Wayback Machine.
I love it.
I know you do.
You can just go back in a period of time and get the news articles themselves on different sightings, and it's pretty cool. I'll go first, or
sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the skunk ape is deeply entrenched in folklore of southern U.S. swamplands, most particularly Florida.
Mm-hmm.
The sightings extend into Louisiana, Georgia, and Alabama. It's considered Florida's answer to Bigfoot.
Right.
With these kind of unique local adaptations. But there are these pre-colonial roots. There's the Seminole and Moksuki tribes, and they spoke of Esti Kepkaki. It's tall man is what it translates to. And I probably butchered the hell out of that, and I'm sorry. I'm not perfect. But it's a powerful forest-dwelling spirit that lived deep in the swamps. And while not a perfect match, this concept laid the groundwork for the belief in what would be these like reclusive wild men.
Okay.
And some legends suggest these beings could shapeshift, some similarities there, disappear at will, or were just protectors of nature. Just kind of a unique side slant. You don't really kind of talk about that like Bigfoot, so to speak. Bigfoot's just kind of this thing through here where this is what I really kind of liked, the story of the skunk ape, where they're kind of this protector of nature. But Bigfoot type creatures in other indigenous traditions do have that same story.
Okay.
That's something that I noticed because I looked around and I was like, is this how it kind of angles with all indigenous stories with that? And of course, them being very nature centric.
Yeah.
It wasn't a huge surprise. But in early modern history of the 1800s to 1930s, there would be these wild men reports. Early European settlers and frontier folk described wild men of the woods, or ape-like beasts, near settlements. In the 1870s, accounts from Florida's Green Swamp and the Panhandle described gorilla-like animals throwing rocks or emitting terrible smells. In the 1940s and 70s, the name skunk ape emerges, and the name likely emerged mid-20th century among rural Floridians. The combination of Bigfoot-like traits and the overpowering stench gave rise to the skunk ape.
Correct.
Sightings increased in the post-war period as development pushed deeper into the wild areas. So the deeper they got, the more of these kind of folklore sightings and things would pop up. 1974 was a peak year. There was dozens of sightings around Dade County, Lee County, and the Everglades. A farmer reported a large hairy thing smashing its way into a barn. Law enforcement received reports of a creature raiding garbage cans and moving through the swamps at night. And there's actually several official police reports that exist from this time. And that's awesome stuff because it really makes it authentic. There's the skunk ape case in 2000, and this is really kind of the most famous modern incident. A woman mailed 2 photographs to the Sarasota County Sheriff's Department. She claimed a creature had been visiting her rural property at night, attracted by fruit. The photos show a dark, hairy figure with deep-set eyes, large teeth, and long arms. She described it as non-aggressive but unsettling, and the smelling was terrible. The smell was terrible. Yes. Skeptics dismissed it as a bear or a hoax, but believers saw it as the clearest evidence of the skunk ape's existence. And so basically the physical description that most of the accounts come to, the height could be anywhere from 5 to 7 feet, sometimes up to even 8 feet. Weight, 200 to 400 pounds. Hair, reddish brown, black or dark auburn. Long, matted, and coarse. Eyes would be glowing orange or red in night settings. This would be due mostly to light reflection. They'd say it's a build that's leaner than Bigfoot.
Okay.
So long limbs, hunched or upright gait. The odor would be consistent with, some would say, rotten cabbage, sewage.
Yep.
Wet dog smell.
Yep.
Or sulfur, they would say. And it would just be described.
Okay.
All of them were nauseating.
Right.
Anywhere
Yeah.
around it, it
Sickening.
was just a very
Yeah.
sickening smell. The sounds would be screams, guttural howls, low growls, loud tree knocks, and also mimicking animal calls.
Mm-hmm.
And the behavior would be reclusive, nocturnal, cautious, may throw rocks or flee when spotted. So to get into some of the sightings and reports, there's Okeechobee, Florida. I think that's how it's pronounced. This 1997 to 2000. Multiple campers in Big Cypress National Preserve claimed to hear howling and found massive barefoot tracks. Some even claimed their tents were rifled through. Ocala National Forest, this is in 1983, a family hiking saw a reddish ape cross the trail ahead of them, and the smell persisted for over an hour. The Everglades Alligator Alley in 1995, a park ranger allegedly observed a man-sized primate wading through a canal, then climbing into the sawgrass and just vanishing. In 2015, Lettuce Lake Park near Tampa, a hiker took a video of a large upright figure moving slowly through the swamp, and debate persists over whether it was a bear or like a man in a suit. The explanations and theories on this, there's the misidentification. A lot of people just think they're black bears walking on their hind legs, or feral humans and homeless people living off the grid, which down there, I hate to say it, you got to put that in context.
Yeah, that's definitely got to be on the list.
As a consideration. I'm not going to say it's clear cut or whatever, but you actually
have to consider that as a possibility.
You do, which is
especially given like
the climate.
Well, no, the description.
Mm-hmm.
Because the description, we're talking with the exception of the 7-8 foot, and you're talking very much people height.
Yes. Versus something crouched over,
correct,
or whatever. But a bear can be tall too.
It can, but the thing is
a bear's kind of a bear.
Yeah, and they don't generally walk on their hind legs.
They don't stride around like that.
They don't. And the only time they do is when they have something wrong with the front paw. Mm-hmm. And they physically can't. Like, there is that black bear in New Jersey who does walk bipedally. But that's the only known bear. And I believe they discovered there was something wrong with that bear's front paws. That's why it didn't.
But with Florida, the way the climate is down there, especially us being from New York, like there'll be homeless here and there'll be people that live out in the woods, but you've got to have some means to survive over the winter and things to that. Where Florida's relatively warm. Mm-hmm. I mean, the winters get cold if you do stay down there. Mm-hmm. Cold just gets cold to people, especially in respects to the heat that you have in the summer. We're not
talking about 6 months of snow and below zero temperatures.
No. You'd be lucky if it snows once there. And so you really have to think about feral humans and homeless people living off the grid.
Well, you definitely have to consider it.
The other is escaped and released primates. Florida once had roadside zoos and private collections of chimpanzees and orangutans. Mm-hmm. And so this has to be taken under consideration. Hurricanes and lax regulation in the past may have allowed these to escape and go feral. Mm-hmm. The other believers argue it's a relic hominoid, possibly a descendant of the Gigantopithecus. My tremor is going through, so I might have a hard time talking with some of this stuff. Or some unknown primate species adapted to the swamp. And then there's the hoax folklore end of it, where some argue that it's just a cultural echo, a southern twist on Bigfoot used in tall tales, tourism and jokes. Mm-hmm. And to kind of get to that, and people will lean on that, there's the whole Skunk Ape research headquarters. And there's, a real roadside stop featuring casts, evidence, and a shop. It's been featured on Animal Planet's Finding Bigfoot, Travel Channel, and in dozens of podcasts. There's Skunk Ape themed stickers. There's T-shirts. There's trail signs that are popular across Florida. And some survivalists and swamp guides use the skunk ape as a don't go too deep into the swamp cautionary tale for children.
Yeah.
So they'll tell children, like, don't go in there because you got the skunk ape and blah, 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 and then what happens is one of two things happen. Nothing happens, and they're like, oh, that's just a bunch of BS.
Right.
Or something happens, and they're like, oh, crap, this shit's real.
Yeah.
So, again, just a timeline, and then I can wrap it up to cut to you on yours. But you had the 20th century had 1940s, and this was the first usage of the skunk ape emerges.
Term, yeah.
And rural Floridians begin referring to this foul-smelling bipedal creature haunting the Everglades as a skunk ape. Local newspapers occasionally reference strange swamp creatures. In 1957, Sewanee County, a woman claims a hunched man-sized ape raided her chicken coop. Local dogs refuse to go near the coop afterward, which that's a weird sign in its own case. 1960s, the increased reports come through, and this is the hunters and campers in Big Cypress that I mentioned earlier. And they report hearing the howls and spotting large tracks and smelling something like rotten eggs. The story spread through Florida backroads, communities, and outdoorsman circles. Again, the 1970s was the peak era. In 1971, you had Monroe County. A man driving through the Everglades at night sees this large, hairy figure cross the road and disappear into the water. 1974, massive surge in sightings. Dozens of reports flood in from Dade County, Naples, and the Everglades. Police receive numerous calls about a creature raiding trash cans, barns, and fields. And the local media picks up the story. The skunk ape now is in like pop culture. 1975, there was national media. Tabloids and cryptozoology magazines publish articles comparing the skunk ape to Bigfoot. Sightings, they taper off, but they remain steady through the late 70s. So then we get into the 80s, and there's Ocala National Forest. A family reports seeing a reddish ape-like creature during a daytime hike. It was silent and walked upright, disappearing into the palmetto underbrush. 1987, Big Cypress Preserve. Campers report hearing screams and finding large footprints. One camper claims a figure watched them from the tree line at dawn. The 90s, you had 1995, Alligator Alley. A park ranger allegedly sees a creature wading in a canal at dusk. He describes it as over 6 feet tall, hairy, and smelling like swamp rot and sulfur. 1997 and 1999, Big Cypress is becoming this hotspot, and hikers and hunters report strange howls, tree shaking, and multiple eyewitnesses of a large upright animal. In 2000, there's this Mayaka skunk ape case, and I'm probably butchering the name, but Mayaka. A Sarasota woman anonymously mails 2 photographs in a letter to the sheriff's office, claims a large ape-like creature was stealing apples from her porch at night. The photos become viral in cryptid circles, and that's where the name of the Mayaka skunk ape comes into play. Yep. 2000s to 2010s, we start getting into the cryptid fame. This is where the skunk ape headquarters opens. Dave Shealy, a prominent skunk ape researcher, opens the skunk ape research headquarters in Ojeepi, I think it is. I know I should know better to know that name, but whatever. He claims to have seen the creature multiple times since childhood. 2010 features on TV. Skunk Ape appears in Finding Bigfoot, Travel Channel specials, and YouTube documentaries. This is where the skeptics start claiming hoaxes or misidentifications of bears, feral people, or even escaped primates. 2015 Lettuce Lake Park video. A man films a large upright figure moving slowly through the swamp. The footage divides viewers, some saying it is the skunk ape, and others say it's a bear or a man in costume. 2020s, there's continued interest in 2020 itself. The Everglades sightings resurface. Multiple social media posts claim sightings near Shark Valley, often accompanied by sounds or smells. And then 2023, there's this TikTok YouTube surge, and the skunk ape sightings go viral as urban explorers and adventurers are now trying to find it.
Right.
And new evidence includes tracks, blurry images, and howls captured on video. I have some links to some stuff, and I'll forward them over to you.
Okay.
That you could put on the Facebook group.
All right.
Of just the different photos and videos and things of that. You could sprinkle them out through the week. But,
Sure.
But it's pretty cool because...
My introduction to the Skunk Ape was the Mayaka Skunk Ape
okay.
on Bigfoot Collectors Club.
Gotcha.
They had a bullshit or believe it game. And the Mayaka Skunk Ape, you either believed it or you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't, that unlocked a game where Bryce had a minute to try and sell you Skunk Ape. It was awesome because sometimes he would do a 911 call with the old lady. Is somebody missing an ape? Oh my God, it was great. It was incredible. I loved it.
I love these ones that have multiple witnesses, people that see similar things, and they say the similar type of attributes.
Right.
I was down in Florida for a while visiting because my dad lived there for, I want to say, over 13 years.
For a minute, yeah.
And I never heard anything like that. But here's the thing. I wasn't really out in those circles either.
Right.
I was hanging out on beaches and chasing girls and all that stuff.
Oh my God, weird that they wouldn't be talking about the Skunk Ape.
No.
Boy, it's a good thing you changed
and then
the type of girl you were.
That small stripper circle I was hanging out with for a year or two.
Really? They didn't bring up the Skunk Ape?
They didn't bring
not
anything
once?
up about the Skunk Ape, but I have some crazy stripper stories I heard, that's for sure. Holy man.
My Lanta.
Oh, wow. Crazy stories. Absolutely crazy.
Wowie.
Yeah, that was something I never thought it was never like a circle I thought I was going to be intimately involved in.
Right. Like you
on
never,
that level.
you never
And
see
I never really hung
in
out with them.
school,
I
you know, someday I'm going to have a bunch of stripper friends.
I'm going to have some stripper knowledge. Like
Exactly. I did
on the
learn,
worker end. You
right.
know.
I did learn from a realtor that it is not uncommon for a stripper to pay cash for a house.
Yeah. No, they make good money.
Yeah.
The problem is there's the ones that can go into it and they get it.
Right.
They get what the whole scenario is.
Mm-hmm.
And that you're dealing with just people that have problems.
Right.
The people that are going there. I mean, you have the touristy end of it where you have some friends and like, let's go to the strip club tonight and blow a couple $100 or $1,000 or whatever, you know, and there's that bit. But then there's the routine ones, the ones that go all the time.
Yeah.
The regulars.
Yes.
And those are some sorry people. And they have things wrong with them. There's things legitimately wrong with them. Because why would you go shopping for something there? Like, why would you go to that store?
Well, there are those that go there who believe they are having relationships with those. With those strippers.
Yeah. And I would hear those crazy stories of they got to have the guard, the bodyguard, walk them out to the car because there's the guy there with the flowers, and he's got a shot at, you know, honey.
Yeah, he's got to shoot his shot.
He's got a shot at Sapphire.
Yep.
And
Candy with an eye.
But then the thing is
Bambi.
Like this one woman was describing me. She goes, there's some girls here that see that as like a wounded animal and they need to fix it or take care of it.
Yeah.
Then there's the other, that's not the huge part of the story. The big part of it where I was saying like there's kind of two sides to it. There's the ones that go there, they do the work, they get the money, and it's a means to an end.
Right.
Like I'm going to buy a house or I'm going to, whatever.
This is just so I can finish my education.
And a lot of them go into it with that. Most of them. Then what happens is it's just such a terrible industry that you have to be numb on it. And if you don't have that physical ability the mental ability to separate yourself from it, that's where the drugs come in. And once the drugs come in, you're done.
Yep.
Because now you're making all this cash And now you're spending it for drugs so you can keep making cash.
Right.
And it becomes this negative feedback loop.
Right.
To where now you're strung out and you're a mess. And now no one wants to give you any tips or any money.
Yep.
And now you've got this terrible drug habit and you're running around terrible people.
Right.
Who are all okay about giving you drugs to make you sick. Didn't care about your future or where it would take you. And the ones I was hanging out with, I saw one that was happening to them. But the rest of them had their heads on pretty straight. One was a single mother, and she was like, I'm getting a house. Once I get a house, I'm going to pay cash for a house.
Yeah. And
then I'm just going to get a regular job.
Yeah, and I'm going to be done.
And she's like, and I don't care what it is, as long as I have a regular job and I can feed my son and, all that type of stuff. And I respected that. I didn't agree with it. And I remember telling her, I was like, I think there's a lot of different ways you could do this. And my whole thing with that was you're helping to create this just negative situation.
Yeah, you're perpetuating it.
Yeah, but I get what she was saying. Well, if I ain't going to do it, somebody else will.
Right.
And I get it. I do. I don't like it, but I get it. However, that's not what everybody came. Well, maybe some people are interested in stripper stories.
Hey, Frank, can we do the stripper stories?
No, because I don't have enough.
Yes.
All right, so what you got, Jen?
I got the Porterville Gnome.
Yeah?
Yep. And you're like, that's got to be a one-off. Yeah, we'll see.
Is he in lawns all over the suburban atmosphere? No?
The evil little man only came at night, and although its origin wasn't clear, its intention toward Charlie Thomas's family was. It meant them harm. Thomas, her husband, and their 2-year-old twin girls moved out of the 2-story country house in Porterville, California, by the Tule River in 2010 to escape the cackling imp. Thomas's story seemed very familiar because it was. This story had been heard before. In 2009, from a woman named Tammy, who moved to Porterville, California, into a 2-story home nestled amongst a few other houses by the Tule River. A gnome-like creature terrorized her and her family as well. When asked if they could be talking about the same house, quote, "It does sound like the house we lived in, only there were no other houses close to us," she said. But the description of that barn, and everything else sounds just like it, and the Tule River runs behind the house. I don't know what to think about it all, end quote. But she wanted to know. Her experience was too terrifying for her to be at peace. Quote, "It's too creepy to think that there are more of those creatures," she said. "I would like to speak to those other people and find out if we were in the same house or close to it. And thanks for telling me, because I thought I lost my mind," end quote. Charlie and Tammy were put in contact with each other. Tammy didn't think it was the same house either. Quote, "Charlie sent me an email and she described the house that she lived in, but it didn't sound like the same place because the place where I lived had other houses on the property," Tammy said. "But then she started naming some of the side streets, and then I knew it was the same house or really close to it. Overwhelmed with curiosity, the women met and drove to the property. Quote, "We decided to go over there to make sure that we were talking about the same place," Tammy said. "It definitely was the same place. I guess whoever bought it from my landlord had all the other homes moved off of it." As Tammy stood looking at the house, where a 3-foot tall man with pointed teeth and an evil cackle stalked them in the night, something seemed wrong. The barn was gone. Quote, "We thought that we might get the nerve up to go and take pictures of the barn to send you, but it was gone," she said. And this is a reporter telling the story. Someone had torn down the shed, a place of refuge for the gnome-like creature, and Thomas was happy of that. Quote, "We had talked about the possibility of looking inside the shack," Thomas said. "I really didn't think I would have been able to get close to it. Forget about going into it. Even with that shack gone, the whole place still had an eerie feel to it, and I don't know if that is because of what we dealt with while living there or just the place itself. I don't think I'll be going back there again, end quote. Before they left, the women approached their old house and knocked on the door. The current resident was not happy to see them. Quote, I'm not trying to be nasty or anything, but the lady that owns it now could very well be an old troll, Tammy said. She was just hateful. And when we tried to ask her about the barn, she pretty much told us to get lost. And not in those nice words, end quote. Thomas was equally taken aback. Quote, we tried to ask the woman who lives there now about the shack and if she had ever experienced anything while it was there, but she didn't want to talk to us, Thomas said. In fact, she told us to leave the property. She didn't have to tell me twice. I was happy to get away from there. The visit brought back other memories to Tammy, memories that rang of the gnome. Quote, one of the old houses that were on the property when I lived there, the people that lived in the smallest of the houses had some paranormal things going on, she said. They would get up in the morning to find huge piles of feces on their kitchen and living room floors, and they didn't have dogs in their house. They would also hear their names called when no one else was home, and televisions and radios would come on at night. Quote, when they turned them off, they would go right back on, only louder. And when they tried to turn them off again, they could hear a really nasty, creepy voice yell at them to leave it the fuck alone, Tammy said. Could it be that creepy gnome thing in the house? It was just too weird, end quote. Thomas just hopes the evil little man is gone. Hopefully that creepy little creature didn't move to another barn or shed or shack and is not terrorizing someone else, she said. One thing I would like to know is where did it come from and why was it there, other than to terrorize everyone who lived near that old shack, end quote. So gnomes are mythological creatures of European origins. They're earth elementals. They're said to dwell in caves or are in generally subterranean places. They've been represented as small, about 12 to 18 inches tall. They typically look like a little old man with long white beards and round bellies, generally wearing green or brown. As the earth is their home, they generally scamper out of holes and stumps of trees, can vanish by dissolving into a tree or into the ground. Some communities are vast underground spaces constructed of alabaster and marble, and they're ruled by the king Gob. They are guardians of earthly treasures, including minerals and metals and precious stones. Their work includes cutting crystals into rocks and developing veins of ore. Some say they are friendly and helpful to mankind. Others believe them to be malicious or tricksters until you win their trust. They're physically deformed creatures that resemble dry, gnarled old men. In many tales around the world, gnomes have been known to be mischievous and sometimes dangerous creatures that have terrorized families. So Tammy and the Thomas case appeared on the series Monsters and Mysteries in America, and I tried to pull it up and it didn't work. So based on this description of gnomes and the fact that their gnome guy had the pointed teeth and he was 3 foot tall, I don't think what they had was a gnome.
No.
Because it doesn't really fit, because gnomes typically, regardless, in the stories, they're little, they're almost like elves. You know, they're just like the dwarves from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So I'm
sorry if I seem distracted. I just came up with a dad joke for a gnome.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What is it?
What's a gnome that has good rhythm and lives in the city? A metronome. I'm kind of proud of myself.
It's good. I hate to give it to you, but that is good.
I'm sorry.
Now, I don't know. It is evident that this creature, whatever it was, seemed to live in that shack. And again, gnomes, much like dwarves, are subterranean creatures, and that doesn't seem to be what happened.
No.
So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it was a goblin, because there are stories of
There are goblin stories out there.
Goblins. It could just be a little person, you know? Especially if...
Getting into a tough area there.
You know, or it could just be a homeless person. You know, maybe not even a man at all. Just a homeless person or a displaced person. Someone from, you know, let's jump into our time slip. Could be someone out of time and place.
Sure.
You know? I don't know. But I don't think it was a gnome.
No.
I think they have it right with evil little man. Or...
like the leprechaun in the movie?
mean, maybe.
The horror movie, the leprechaun.
You know? Mischievous creature. It could be.
Could be a leprechaun.
I don't think they used the proper term. I don't think it was a gnome. I think something else would fit it better. Be it a goblin or... It's not a chupacabra.
No. We could take that off the list.
It's not Nessie. It's not a skunk ape.
It's not a metro gnome.
It's not a metro
not in
gnome.
a metropolitan city.
No, sir. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think it was a gnome because
I'd
again,
side with you on that.
You know, it doesn't fit the gnome lore.
Yeah, I'd back you up on that.
But the fact that two people living at the same place, essentially, but it's kind of like a 2-year period, like, because they were there 2008 through 2009 and left. And then the next family was left by 2010. So you can assume sometime in 2009 to 2010. But like this other stuff, the things turning off and on by themselves, that's more poltergeist activity. So
it really makes you think.
It does. Like your description of the skunk ape, you know, down with the sulfur smell and the
consistencies with all that.
Yeah.
Each one kind of having the same.
Yeah. Like I don't rule out some type of demonic creature.
It's tough.
You know what I mean?
This is the tough part. And I say this as a full-blood religious Christian Catholic.
Yeah.
But demonic activity, you got to be careful with that because everything could be demonic. And that's a real dangerous road to go down.
It is.
Because then you get into that deliverance stuff we were talking about last episode.
Yeah.
Where everything's a demon, everything's this, but
yeah,
it's tough with things that shapeshift.
Mm-hmm.
Like you start hearing that kind of stuff and it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Where's that thin line?
You know, speaking of shapeshifters, I would definitely like to do an episode on that, be it shapeshifter, skinwalker.
Sure. We haven't done a skinwalker one yet.
We haven't. And man, depending on where you are in the country, determines how it shapeshifts.
Very much so.
And that is intriguing AF. However, all of the native peoples tell you, no, you don't talk about that because when you talk about it, it's almost like calling it to you.
Yeah, that's first with the shapeshifters and say the skinwalkers, but I think the really juicy information that's coming out as of late, as far as people researching that, is they're around these highly magnetic areas. And that to me is compelling.
Yes, but I have discovered one of the other consistent patterns is forest or like state park locations.
Yes.
They are prevalent there. And they mimic human voice, human sound. They mimic other animals. They appear as benign animals. And from that, like, if you make eye contact or you have some sort of connection with it, well, now they are actually connected to you. And they can almost, like GPS tracking, track you down even when you go home.
Yeah. That's
so it's compelling.
It's
I will
very
say that.
compelling. I agree. It's very compelling. I'd like to think I'm very curious to see what the next 10 years of research into all this stuff, skinwalkers, cryptids, gnomes, all this type of stuff. I'm curious to see where it goes, because the last 10 years, it's been very positive in the realm of people getting evidence. We're just still in this identification phase type thing. My big question that I always want to know with a sighting now, and I never get an answer on it. Were you on anything?
Yeah.
That's my big thing. I'm sorry. If you're hiking out in the woods, you guys just smoked a big joint, or you're on some crazy gummies.
Yeah.
And you see something out in the woods, I'm sorry, I have to discredit you immediately. I just have to immediately. I've been out in the woods enough on mushrooms and all this crazy stuff, and like, especially with mushrooms, you'd be surprised what you see out there.
Yeah.
I've watched trees breathe. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I've sat there and I've sat right in front of a tree and watched it breathe. Just expand, contract, contract. Not massive by like feet, but just a little bit.
Yeah.
And it just looks like it's breathing. Now, was it breathing? Who the hell knows?
Well, I mean, technically it is, but it breathes out of its leaves.
Yeah, I'm saying out of a trunk of a tree, though. And it just, but I would say, even to myself, you'd have to discredit that account because I'm on something.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Now, you have those people that go through the woods and they're like, yeah, no, we just go hunting all the time. And, no beer because we want to be safe with our firearms or, or just whatever. People don't drink or do anything. And the sober accounts, I'm totally for. Or these investigative teams that go through there and they're like, we don't want a single thing contaminating our efforts here. And those, I think, are meaningful. But the demonic thing, to get back to that, you hear some crazy things. Like, I think we have to go back to demonology at some point, because all the stuff I've read since season 1 on Catholic priests and what they've discovered with demonology and how their exorcisms and their case files and all that stuff, it's unreal on how a demon can project itself in front of you, actually manipulate what you see.
Yes.
Like it's reflection of some kind, or the way I've heard it is Father Carlos mentions it along with a couple other Catholic exorcists. They manipulate light.
Yes. They manipulate
what you think about it. What you're seeing
impression. What you see is not like,
what you see is light. Like light is you're seeing a reflection of light of some kind.
And they manipulate
and
that.
If they can manipulate that, which they say is possible, and they can, now you're really questioning a lot of stuff here.
Right. And so Tammy, she was the original person that lived in this house, and it was her family that had the first experiences with this thing. It was her and her 3 children. They lived in that house. And she said she always had a feeling of being watched, and there was an ominous feeling that would come from the barn. One evening, as she came home from the grocery store with her son, they reported hearing an evil-sounding chuckle as they walked toward their door. When they turned in the direction of the voice, about 50 yards away, stood what she could only describe as a gnome. The creature was about 2 or 3 feet tall and grinned at them with a creepy smile that spread ear to ear with brown, jagged, pointy teeth. Tammy and her son ran inside and locked the doors. As she gathered her family, she noticed it moving outside the kitchen window, and it would eventually disappear. And that's just one of the incidences from 2 different families, and they all say that point of origin was that shed or that little barn, that was the locus for this. But I think they've got the term. I don't think it's a gnome. I think we're talking about something else, something in the same family, maybe.
Maybe.
I'm thinking more like goblin.
Okay.
And that would fit with the goblin stories.
Sure.
And the goblin lore.
Yeah, I buy that.
Yeah. But we'd have to do a story on a goblin. It's a good thing I know a story about a goblin.
There are goblin stories. Those are old stories.
There are.
A lot of old goblin stories.
Have you seen the picture of... It was 2 creatures that were found in like stone or like, I want to say in like a mountain.
I think it was a mountain. I know the one you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were little. And I think that's what they used to say, hey, definitely, I think the stories of goblins and gnomes.
Those are old stories, very old stories. You read old accounts of stuff. And the goblins. But this gets back to, like I said, the next 10 years I'm looking forward to with respects to like skinwalkers, gnomes, cryptids, Bigfoots, skunk apes, all that stuff. At some point, you can only go so long before you don't capture one where people are going to start questioning everything you do. But then I'm also going to say this is where if you can't catch one, and I say catch one, like find a corpse, find whatever, you're going to have to start transitioning into this kind of spiritual verse of manipulation of light and all that. And and are you seeing what you think?
Are you really seeing what you think you're seeing?
Yeah. And with the era that we're in right now with drones and infrared and
AI.
Well, let's just get AI out of the question. Just the drones, infrared, all the different types of cameras we have. And, you can see all of this stuff and track things. And that's at some point, we as the human species need a definitive find where it's just like for Bigfoot. Yeah. Just enough of this catching on to the next season and catching on to the next season. Just find it. Find a Bigfoot. Yeah. Whether it's dead, whether it's not. And I get some of the hunter stories where they talk about it, where they're like, I saw it and I couldn't shoot at it.
Yeah. Had it in the scope and they couldn't do it.
And I get that.
Because it looks just human enough.
It's not even human enough. Like, what if it's the last one? Yeah. Do you want to, or there's just a handful of them. I get that from a conservationist standpoint. Yep. I understand that. And this gets into the tough thing because you can't question what people see because they saw it. And that's their witness to that. And you got to respect that. And I always say that just with my religious experience I had. You don't have to believe it, but that's all I ask you is just respect it. Right. Because it happened.
Consider it.
I was a witness to it. So you have to consider it. I was talking to one of my friends because they heard through the grapevine what was going on with me and everything. And they were like, yeah, dude, so is it true? And I was like, yeah, it's true. It happened. It's like, I said, think about it. Think about what I was 10 plus years ago. Yeah. and look at me now. Something had to happen.
Yeah.
That's the proof.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why would I do this? It's against everything.
It's against everything you stood for.
It's against everything I was, everything I, and now it's just 180 degrees the other way.
Yeah.
If you want further proof, well, yeah, go for it. Try to find it. But the fact that I'm going to mass every morning.
Yeah.
And I'm going to mass on Saturdays. I'm going to Latin mass on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more charitable now than I've ever been in my whole entire existence.
Yes.
And I wasn't a Scrooge earlier.
No, but
now it's just
noticeably, and it's not just.
And it's not self-gratification for me to make me feel good.
But your charitable acts aren't limited to one type of thing.
Yeah. Like, that's what I was trying to explain to them. I'm going to see the same person this weekend coming up, but it's just, it's not just donating money to things or just helping. Like, I'll see somebody on the side of the street. Mm-hmm. I'll stop. I'll talk to them. Yeah. What's your name? Can I pray for you?
You've bought them food.
I've literally turned and bought them food. And it just, it's a different, and now I've got this whole path I'm being led on this summer with the building, and getting that, I hate to sound cryptic about it, but I got to talk to other people before I get all that going.
There's a couple things I want to talk to you about.
No, definitely. But that's where, like, things like these sightings and stuff like that, I can't dismiss that. I'd be a terrible person if I did. Terrible.
I can't discount it.
Why would you put everything on the line for that?
Exactly. And these two, for me, what's compelling is clearly something was there. These two people experienced almost identical situations that all stemmed from the same place. Yeah. I mean, we're not talking about the Amityville house where it was just the
family and
that
the
one
priest that was on the take.
Exactly. Where they're the only ones who experienced anything, and everyone before and after is like, no.
But even that, this is where the spiritual side of things, to me, it was all question mark until I had that situation at night sleeping, and I had the huge handprint on my chest for a short period of time. And that's when it all changed for me. Mm-hmm. I look at the capability of a demonic power on a whole different lens now. Yeah. And that handprint on my chest and the crazy things that led up to that, with me basically asking for that as proof that Jesus is taking care of me. Like all these things that I'm pursuing towards. Right. Am I protected by you, or am I just throwing myself out to the wind? Can I rely on your protection? And and I
am I reading this right?
Well, and that's what happens when you go on these spiritual journeys that I was explaining to a friend of mine. It's when it's only happening to you, it's messed up because you're like, am I just making all this crap up?
Am I imagining this? Is this all just like a tulpa?
So you're having this massive, powerful experience, but is it a tulpa? And am I creating all this? And you have those real conversations with yourself. I had those real conversations with myself. And then I had a series of things that offset that. Right. My mom dying was one of the most crazy experiences of my life. And not only did I see the crazy stuff that was happening, it was my brother.
Around you saw it too,
was the nurse staff. Yeah. It was the case management woman that was working there. And we're all sitting there looking like, this is crazy. Yeah. And that, I have a feeling, I always say God doesn't work in straight lines, and God's working, spinning multiple amount of things at the same time. Everything is at odds and at play there. But you do have the decision. God gives you that free will to move. But when I had that moment where I woke up, because the figure that was in front of me was terrifying, and I literally thought that I was dying. Like, I thought that was it. And I was like, what did you just ask for? Yeah. And I thought I was dying and I was going to go. I thought I made some spiritual error of some kind. And then I wake up and I realize that that figure could only get that far to me. That was the math I did later. Like that was, in my opinion, God or Jesus or the Trinity, what have you, or maybe everything, angels or what have you, my guardian angel protecting me, and let that thing get so close to me to put that mark on my chest. And that was, I tried, like moving my chest around thinking if I fell asleep on my hand or whatever.
No.
But
that was your evidence.
But that was my evidence to say, no, this is really happening to you.
Yes.
So again,
this is real.
Again, the situation still stands. You have a choice. Yeah. Do you want to walk this way and follow me?
Yes.
Or do you want to do this stuff that you've been doing on your own?
Right.
And that really made me think. And so all this stuff that I see here, you just wonder, man, is it just that simple? Is it just light being positioned in a way of an evil force that wants you to be tempted?
Are we talking about tulpas and golems? Are we talking about something that, because of the lore and because of the internet exposing that story and those descriptions to so many people, are we inadvertently creating these things? And where it's not really real. You know what I mean? The golem wasn't really real, but it sure did real stuff. So, I mean,
I always say the scariest thing that would be about aliens and all of this stuff is, because people always say, oh, the government knows this, the government knows that. I think it would just, the scariest answer would be the government be like, yeah, we know this stuff is happening, but we don't know.
We've got nothing.
We got nothing. Like, we don't have an alien just kind of laying around or whatever. We don't have any of that kind of stuff. We don't have Bee-Boo. We don't have any of these things. We don't have a craft. We don't have any
nothing
of it. We got nothing of it. Everything that we have is what we made and what we did. And because even these government guys that come out and say, oh, I worked on X and blah, 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 and all this other stuff, it never goes anywhere. And I hope I'm proved wrong, because this option of it being proved out that all this stuff is real makes it easier. It makes it easier to deal with. Okay, there's little gnomes running around. Check. I got to watch out for those.
Enough.
There's little goblins walking around. Check. I got to watch out for those.
Fair enough.
There's Bigfoots out in the woods. Check. I got to watch out for that stuff. But the other side of it, that there's this larger game of good and evil, and there's this deceiver of deceivers that's, playing, this chess game, and, the odds are your soul. That's scary, because now it could be anything. It could be gnome today. It could be Bigfoot tomorrow.
Could be nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. Horror stuff's fun.
Isn't it?
So what are we doing next week?
We're going to do another BOGO.
We are? Two in a row?
We are.
Say it isn't so.
I love BOGOs.
Yeah.
They're my favorite. We're doing Haunted House Edition.
We sure are.
So we have the Bel Air House for representing Ohio, and we have Orchard Hall representing New York.
New York.
Well,
well, it's New York.
Part of New York.
It's in New York.
Yep.
It's not half and half or anything like that.
No.
So yeah, we're doing Haunted House BOGO edition.
Yep.
And for those that are new to the podcast, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
We have a big back catalog for you to dive into.
For those of you, this was your first time visiting and you're like, yo, man, I'm out.
Well, they're already gone. They're already gone. They didn't make it this far. That's why I always save it to here.
Yeah.
But we ask that you share us.
Yeah.
And let others know, because as you're aware, no ads.
Nope.
None of that stuff.
No.
We're organic as it gets.
Yeah. Yep.
So we work on the kindness of others.
We do.
And people have been very kind.
Well, actually, let's be honest. We work on the horrors of others. That's where we get.
I just mean the
podcast,
the views, and
yes.
the numbers, because we do good numbers wise, and
we do.
That is off the kindness of others. So thank you for being kind. Is what I'm getting at.
Yep.
So rule number 1.
No Ouija boards.
Number 2.
No dolls.
Oh, number 3.
No capes.
Number 4.
No blood rituals.
So those of you that are not in the room.
Engaged like a sleeper.
So Dean Winchester, our famed creative director, sleeps the whole time while we're doing the podcast.
Until we get to the tenants.
Until we get to the tenants. And then usually around rule 3, he pops up and the tail wags.
And that's exactly what happened.
And that's what happened. Or what are we at, 4?
4, no blood rituals.
Yeah. 5?
No cults, satanic or otherwise.
No. Number 6.
No apathy. You need to act to help enact a positive change in this world.
Yeah, or you could just come up for face scritchies.
That was a good stretch.
Yeah. Number 7.
Don't engage with black identities.
It's not a good idea. Number 8.
Just listen.
Yeah.
We just listened for a long time, guys.
We did. Not as long as last week, but
No.
we're getting back to our normal hours here.
Yes.
Number 9.
No pedophiles.
Nope. None.
0.
0 tolerance.
Yeah.
And last but not least.
If you have something to do, do it.
Yep. Whatever it is.
Whatever it may be.
Get it done.
Get her done.
And with that being said, we hope you have a lovely day, an amazing week.
And make good choices.
Take care.